course. All right, we're moving to a story that has been making headlines over the last, last day or so. But also, we heard in the breakfast show also a conversation on that around those directives, or a directive that was issued by the Minister of Communication, Soli Malatsi. It's a policy direction that basically relaxes ownership rules for foreign telecommunications companies like Elon Musk's Starlink. Now, there's been a lot of response to this, a lot of reaction. I've seen the ANC reacting to this. They've issued an entire statement, and they basically saying that these directions exceed the minister's legislative authority. They undermine South Africa's transformation framework, and they threaten the integrity of our ICT and postal regulatory environment. There's also been a similar sentiment that's been shared by the EFF as well. So political parties not happy about this. Of course, this has been a long time coming. We've been seeing the Minister Soli Malatsi making these moves towards this point, and the directive that was issued, I believe it was on Friday, has sparked fresh conversation. But someone here to help us make sense of Parliament's response to this, as well as what this means for Parliament's Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies, is the committee's chairperson, that is Khusela Diko, who joins us now on the line. Khusela, good morning. Thank you so much for your time.
Good morning, Kgomotso. Let me greet your listeners, and thank you so much for inviting us onto the program.
Sure. Can you first let's just deal with what the minister has been saying around the direction that he issued, because he has been asked quite a bit about it. I've been seeing interviews that he's been doing over the weekend, and he says he's merely trying to harmonize the regulations with the BEE rules. And he says he's just trying to create an environment that allows international players easier access into the country, and that is great for us as a country. But of course, this is something that you reject.
Yes, not only do we reject it, Kgomotso, but we've asked that those directives are withdrawn with immediate effect. Now, this is because the minister is acting contrary to the law. He has no powers whatsoever to amend legislation, especially by doing so through stealth, as we think is in this case. He has said, or taking from what you've just reported now, he has said that he wants to harmonize laws. Now, he can only exercise powers that are given to him by legislation. If he believes that there's a disjuncture between two laws, he's supposed to approach the courts for a declaratory order where he thinks that there's confusion in terms of the laws. Alternatively, if he wants to amend the law, he must approach Parliament to make those changes to regulation. So we think that, as I said, he's overreaching, and in doing so, he's also threatening the independence of the regulator, ICASA, by giving them what is essentially an unlawful instruction.
Yeah. And which specific sections, Khusela, do you believe, are being flouted by the minister? These are sections of the Electronic Communications Act.
Yes. Section 9 of the Electronic Communications Act deals with licensing of communication network services licenses. And what it says, I may not have it in front of me to quote it verbatim, but what it says is that to apply for a license, you need to have a minimum 30% equity ownership by historically disadvantaged persons. Now, he seeks to read this and conflate issues deliberately, firstly with the BEE Act as well as the ICT codes. He is relying on what he thinks is a loophole in the ICASA Act, which says, and that I do have so I can read it for you verbatim, which says that to get a license, the percentage of equity ownership to be held by these historically disadvantaged groups must be not less than 30%, or such other conditions, or higher percentage as may be prescribed by the Act. Now, that or such other conditions is this loophole that I think is identified. But just an elementary understanding of statutory interpretation, which we hope the minister would have, would indicate to you that you need to read legislation in context. The legislators could not have intended that they would say not less than 30% and then say or higher percentage, and then you think that other such conditions means you can do away with that. That statement of 30%, it's peremptory. It means that it is mandatory. and it cannot be changed by regulation. Hence, we are calling on him to follow due process if he's trying to amend the law.
And what is your view on alternative compliance mechanisms like the equity equivalent investment programs? We know that there are other international organizations that have taken advantage of that, the likes of Microsoft. And the minister is basically saying, we've seen this happen before. Surely it can happen in this instance?
Well, EEIPs are part of our legislative landscape. They are allowed not only, in other sectors like automobile, but also in the ICT industry. Where there is a difference, for example, you mentioned Microsoft, the likes of Oracle, Amazon, and all of them who operate in the country, is that they are not providing network connectivity. And that is where the licensing requirement comes in, because once you then want to provide network connectivity, you must be licensed with its condition of 30%. This difference is important because to provide network connectivity, you need to be allocated radio frequency spectrum. Now, that is a finite resource, a strategic resource of the country, like water, like land, like minerals. And that is why we are so hell-bent on saying that transformation in that case is non-negotiable. You can't, Kgomotso, have foreign players in this country with absolutely no local ownership taking what are our resources and them being run elsewhere. We have no satellite capabilities that we own in South Africa. You have an opportunity through this program to ensure that you don't just tinker on the sidelines of transformation, but you drive ownership, management, and control of those resources through a local ownership. We're also concerned, which I suppose is a different discussion, but we're also concerned around, our digital sovereignty, whether it's data centers, whether it is satellite operators, because as I've indicated that none of these, are locally owned, but I do want to make a point that there's no shortage of satellite operators with exactly the same capabilities as Starlink who have absolutely no objection to complying with our local laws, because these laws are neither unique nor sinister. Many other jurisdictions have similar ownership requirements. And, you just look at Starlink. They're operating in Zambia, in India, in partnership with local companies. Why must it be different in South Africa? And I think that's what we're calling on to say that we need to have a company that shows respect for their country's laws. And Mr. Musk, we have already seen his absolute disdain for our government and our laws. And we cannot then, allow a situation where bending the rules to accommodate just him when we have alternatives.
Yeah. We're having the conversation with Khusela Diko, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies, really weighing in on that policy it's a direction that's been published by the Communications Minister, Soli Malatsi, on Friday. Someone here commenting saying, I have a great concern with regard to Minister Malatsi's directive that ICASA reconsider its rules on local ownership, which is opposed, among others, by Elon Musk. His move to ease rules, hobbling Starlink to enter the South African market. The question is, what is at stake for Minister Malatsi to reissue that directive despite opposition from his own political party? I think, Khusela, the sentiment that that I'm getting from a number of listeners, but also, from the comments and the reaction I've seen at the weekend, is that this does seem to be a little sneaky on the part of the minister, that he's gone out of his way to look for this loophole, and he's using this loophole. But also, some people have even questioned the timing of the issuing of the directive on a Friday night. What's your view on that?
I think as a country, we're very, very skeptical of festive season policy directives. But you see, what's particularly troubling, Kgomotso, is that this process didn't start now. It started, I think, late last year, where the minister would have approached ICASA to request their opinion on his proposed policy directives as they were at that time. And ICASA came back to him and they indicated that he would not be able to change legislation through policy directives. He should rather follow the law. Now, the minister, this is not the first time we've had to call him out for really just being legally delinquent, because the correct process would have been to initiate a process to amend the law. I'm not saying that would not have been challenged itself, because we do know that the political party that has deployed him to government is very, very determined to reverse the gains that have been made in empowerment, particularly the black economic empowerment legislation. Now, he has also not even, consulted with his cabinet colleagues. You would think that a policy change of this nature, he would at least seek to ensure that cabinet is behind him. It's not a requirement in law, but it's one of those things that we think, the cabinet also needs to inquire into. Ourselves as Parliament, we are going to await the position of ICASA on this matter. And as we do so, we continue to protect and safeguard their independence of the regulator to make an independent decision on this matter. But we'll also be calling the minister into Parliament in the new year. He did appear before us in May. The portfolio committee was unanimous, barring the DA, of course, on the fact that these regulations are undesirable, they're procedurally flawed, yet he continued. So we're calling for that immediate withdrawal, and we're really hoping that sanity will prevail in this case.
All right, let's take some calls. The number to dial is 011-883-0702. Paul, you're in Johannesburg. You want to ask about how this may be limiting opportunities. Please go ahead.
Yes, good morning, and good morning to the Portfolio Committee Chair. No disrespect to your position. South Africa is in desperate need for education. What you are saying here about the minister flouting the law may very well be the case. I'm not arguing that fact. What I am arguing is ownership of a spectrum that is never going to be used if it wasn't for Starlink to come into the country. Absolutely never. The spectrum that you're asking him to pay this 31% on, that's the first question. The second question is the biggest portion of the current government's vote is a rural vote, an uneducated rural vote because of the situation of no connectivity. You're sitting there mentioning laws and sections of the policy law and this and everything else, and you're not absolutely considering that. And what that leads me to believe, and these are the two questions I'd like you to answer, is one, who is going to buy that spectrum if Musk doesn't provide equity to educate our population? And two, is that the answer you're looking for? Do you want the population, the rural population, which is going to benefit from this dramatically, to be uneducated so they can continue voting with a promise as opposed to with information? Those are the two questions I ask, and I really hope you have some answer. I know you're not the final buck stops with you, but those are pertinent questions with relation to information technology in this country. You're wanting to give something that is never going to be bought because it doesn't exist. And second, do you want the population to stay uneducated in terms of information that is provided from having an internet connectivity? Thanks so much. I'll listen on the radio.
Thank you so much. Khusela, please go ahead.
Thanks, Kgomotso. Let me thank Paul for that question as well, the two questions. Let me start with the rural vote. Starlink is not a silver bullet, nor is it a panacea to the challenges that face us on rural connectivity. I have seen that Starlink has made a commitment, again, public pronouncements without going through due process, where they say, should they be allowed to enter the country in the manner that they want, they will connect 5,000 rural schools. Yeah. Now, that 5,000 rural schools is not impressive to us at all. That's because right now, our mobile network operators, to whom spectrum has already been allocated, they have universal service obligations which target rural schools, traditional offices, hospitals, police stations, 21,000 installations that they are meant to be doing within a 3-year period, which started last year. So I'm not sure these 5,000 schools, whether they're going to be connecting them over and above what has already been assigned to the mobile network operators, because we have assigned schools to be connected already, and that work is on the ground. We oversee it on a regular basis, going into these schools and checking connectivity. The second issue is that Starlink is not affordable to the man in the street in a rural community. Just to get the device, I don't know what it's called, the transponder, I think it's called, costs in the region, and these are comparative prices to Zimbabwe, Zambia, where Starlink has already been rolled out. That device is in excess of 5,000 Rand. Then you have your monthly payments, which sit about between 600 and 800 Rand on a monthly basis. I want to know which is this poor, poverty-stricken rural community that can afford to pay that much. Government, on the other hand, is laying out fiber. We have some of our own state-owned enterprises that are in discussions with Chinese companies, Turkish companies, and I know some of the U.S. companies like Amazon who have the same capabilities as Starlink and who have not said that they want to undermine our laws. They're willing to work within the laws of this country. Now, it does not mean that if Starlink is not in the country, we will not have LEO capabilities, and we're going to do that in a manner that is affordable to our people. If you take the issue of spectrum, I'm not sure why Paul would think that nobody is interested and nobody is going to buy spectrum. In March of 2022, government auction spectrum raised 14 billion rand to the fiscus just from the three mobile network operators we have. Cell C was interested. Unfortunately, they could not raise the funding in time. There's another round of spectrum allocation that is intended in the next couple of months, let's say 18 months to a year. And there's significant interest in that. But there's lots of uses of spectrum over and beyond, just ensuring that the likes of Starlink get them. So I suppose, Kgomotso, that the point that I'm trying to make here is that we are not anti innovation. We are not anti-digital transformation. All we are saying is that ours is a legally governed society, and if Starlink wants to enter the country, they need to do that on the same basis as everybody else who is doing business in this country, and the rules are clear for anybody to see.
Yeah, I suppose that's the conversation, really, the compliance with our laws and why we're willing really to bend over backwards to allow Starlink access into the country. But thank you for that response, Minister. We're speaking to Khusela Diko. Did I say Minister? I mean Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies. That is Khusela Diko, responding to that directive that was issued by Minister Malatsi on Friday. And that really essentially allows the flouting of BBBEE laws in order to allow international players like Starlink to enter the South African market. It has been an ongoing conversation that has been driven by the Minister of Communications, Malatsi. That directive being issued on Friday, and now we're seeing Parliament and organizations, political parties responding to this move that has been made by Malatsi. But also, I am seeing many of your voice notes coming through. We're going to be taking them. 072-702-1702 is the number for your voice notes, and 011-883-0702. So what happens now, Khusela, just in terms of from Parliament? Are you guys going to be taking the legal route, or does this mean, I hear you say you're going to invite him to come and account before the committee, but he's been before the committee before, hasn't he?
He has indeed. He appeared before the committee on this matter in May of 2025, where I was saying that, the committee would have raised its disapproval of the process that he wanted to take. I think the minister has played his hand. I think insofar as the law allows him, he has issued that policy directive, and the onus is now on ICASA to consider whether they are going to be complying with the directive or not. And it's important to stress once again that ICASA is an independent regulator.
Yes.
So if a policy, a policy directive is given to them that they feel is ultra vires, it's unlawful, they are well within their rights and their mandate not to implement that policy. So we'll be watching very carefully what ICASA does. We're also calling, I think, on Cabinet to also inquire into this matter. I know that the ANC study group, for example, has called for a joint meeting between Minister Malatsi and Minister Tao of Trade and Industry, who are the owners of broad-based black economic empowerment legislation, maybe to try and find each other there. I cannot at this point say that the Portfolio Committee or Parliament will be taking the legal route on this matter, as we have not yet met, after he issued his policy directive on Friday. But I can assure you, Kgomotso, that this is an issue that we are strongly opposed to, hence our call for withdrawal, and we will be watching the developments from ICASA very closely.
All right, let's take some of your voice notes.
Kgomotso, I don't think we should break rules for the sake of breaking rules, especially for Elon Musk. this guy is being arrogant and want to push the country to a corner. So I think we should not set the wrong precedents. So the laws should always take its course. We cannot allow foreigners to dictate to our country on how we should do our business. If the rule says you need to have a local partner, be to it. So he mustn't try to bully us like Trump. So I think let's stick to our guns, and if he can't follow the rules in the country, then he must go. Thank you, Joe in Pretoria.
Thank you, Joe. I suppose that's the question. Hey, why are we so desperately trying to break the rules to accommodate Elon Musk, right? Especially if we're hearing from Parliament, but also we're hearing the general sentiment is come and operate in the space. We welcome you. We would like you to operate, but do so according to the rules of the land. That really is the view. That's the sentiment, right, Khusela?
That is the sentiment. Absolutely correct, Kgomotso. We welcome foreign direct investment. We welcome any progressive innovations that is going to move our country forward. But I want to speak on the point that the gentleman just raised, just in terms of sovereignty. I did say that, we have a responsibility as South Africans to ensure that our country develops. In Parliament, we initiated a process. The Committee on Communications initiated a process with the Committee on Science, Technology and Innovation, where we are trying to push government to really implement a long-standing resolution of theirs to develop a national sovereign satellite for communication for South Africa. If you just look at Centec, which is our signal distributor and, the buyer of many satellite services, mostly from U.S. companies, we're saying, why is it that we are not looking at building our own technologies, our own infrastructure, working together with the private sector? The likes of Vodacom, MTN, Telkom, I have personally engaged to say that as South African society, we should be coming together to ensure that we're able to do this. We can't have an over-reliance on the likes of Starlink. You've already seen what he did in Ukraine, threatening to cut off their connectivity. I don't think that is what we want in this country. You've already seen Starlink. I mean, they are deeply embedded in the military-industrial complex of the United States, the whole Pentagon contracts. They have, missile defense systems that they're going to be putting up in space. And it's important as a country to ensure that we are sovereign and we are able to drive this. And at the very least, demanding local ownership is part of trying to safeguard that space.
All right, let's leave it there. That's Khusela Diko, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies. She's been speaking and weighing in on that policy direction that's been published by Minister Solly, Communications Minister Solly. And I suppose now the ball is in ICASA's court to respond to this direction, and then it will be established whether Parliament will be taking further steps. But it's a story to definitely keep your eye on.